What's happening, everyone? Your level host is back. Today, a little bit of a different scenario. I'm actually in the Avila Park, which is the surrounding area of Belgrade. And it contains, of course, the great big Avila Tower, which is this giant sort of 60s era memorial tower that is also, of course, a radio and TV station tower that basically powers the whole surrounding area with TV and radio signals. At any event, the woods here are magnificent, as you can tell from the foliage and the raindrops. It's drizzling just a little bit today, but what's important is that I often come here just to think, process, especially in the springtime, just like this. Man, you get clarity. You just get this sort of ability to collect your thoughts. All you hear is the birds chirping. How beautiful it is. With that, what am I getting at today? Very special review. We're going to be talking about the DS003 cartridge with optical decoder and a little bit of the Meitner EQ2. So you're probably thinking, gosh, what in God's green earth is he doing talking about the DS Audio 003 cartridge and decoder from the woods surrounding Belgrade? Well, funny story. As I was sitting here this morning, just minding my own business, thinking, all I kept thinking about was this recurring theme that came up, which was the noise is gone. The city noise is missing. The grit, the shushing, just the swooshing, the noise pollution, it's gone. When you're up here and it's quiet and all you hear are the birds chirping. And it dawned on me, I was like, you know what? This is kind of similar to when I'm listening to the DS audio system. Why is that? Well, frankly, there's a couple of things that you realize. First up, in my opinion, when you plug in and align and connect the very first time ever a DS audio system, I don't care if it's the E1 entry-level cartridge and decoder or the Grandmaster with the Mac Daddy Grandmaster EQ decoder, or the Grandmaster as I have with the DS EQ1 EMM Labs decoder, the first thing you notice is there is an insane amount of quietness. The noise floor is vanishingly low. I know it sounds cliched. I know people talk about it all the time, but please trust me when I tell you that when you play, you put the needle on the record, you drop it, it's silent. Yes, you can, of course, if there's groove noise, you'll hear that, but it's muted. When ticks and pops come up, they're muted. They're far less noticeable than on a regular MCMM cartridge. There's a couple of reasons for that we're going to get to in just a bit. But first, a little history on DS Audio. So Aki-san created DS Audio about 10 years ago in Japan. And it was actually through a chance encounter of a colleague of his who was demoing the old Toshiba C100P, if I'm not mistaken, which was the first commercial cartridge that uses the optical decoder as opposed to a magnet structure like most NMC cartridges do. And he was wowed by that. He was like, wow, this has a lot of potential. Coming from the tech background and having a background in technology and developing optical tracking systems for mice, keyboard, computer mice and stuff, gosh, the first car is coming by. He basically realized that there's potential, there's something that you can do, and you can develop this system into something absolutely magnificent. So this was about 10, 11, 12 years ago. So he launched DS Audio 10 years ago. I think pretty much to this 2023 is their 10-year anniversary. So they've been in business for quite a while. They've been selling these systems. And of course, the big question is, well, wait a second, why, if they've been in business for 10 years, and by the way, none of this is patented on his behalf. In fact, Aki-san wants to have more and more people coming into the fold of creating these optical cartridges. And now, of course, there's an airplane coming. That said, there are a handful of companies coming online that are developing the decoders on the decoder side of things for these optical cartridges, because they don't use a traditional phono amp. But more importantly, I think the reason that you're not seeing so many imitators, flattery, imitation is the biggest flattery, right? Is that the barrier to entry is pretty high. Think about it, you have to develop a whole new skill set of creating these optical phono cartridges. You have to have technicians capable of developing them. They are using a completely different principle. They're using optical shaders instead of magnetic circuits and electrical current to create the phono signal. And so the barrier to entry is pretty high. The level of knowledge, I don't know how low it is, but it's definitely not as wide as you would think it would be. And so, yeah, naturally, there just aren't that many companies that are interested in getting on board. Moreover, outside of Ortofon, Audio-Technica, that are the behemoths of the industry for cartridges, most other companies are run by one or two man shows, right? And so, if you think about that, of how difficult it is to get a new product out the door to begin with, and then on top of it, it being a product that you're not familiar with, that you're just now starting to get into, that you're just starting to learn the ins and outs of designing the circuits, etc. So you can see why it's pretty difficult to enter this market. That said, I do hope that more and more people come into it, because I really think it's time to put MC and MM technology out the door, to the greener pastures, if it were. Not saying there's anything wrong with them. I still have about a half dozen of my favorite MC cartridges that I've collected over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and they're not going anywhere. And, I do play them on occasion, but I tell you one thing, once you hear a DS audio system, in my humble opinion, you'll never go back to a regular MC/MM system. That said, let's look at some of the technical specs that explain in further detail why the cartridge works the way it does and how it sounds the way it does. One of the things that comes up quite often with when I talk about DS audio cartridges is, dude, there's some issues. It's got to be digital, right? It's not, right? It's a fully optical system. Think back to the Laserdisc back in the late 70s, early 80s and mid 80s, where it was an all analog system. Same thing here with the optical cartridge. It's a completely analog system. It stays true to the analog circuit path all the way from A to Z, right? Another thing that keeps coming up is you can't clean records. You can't play it back with cleaned records. I don't understand where these misinforming fake news come from, but they come from somewhere. And so, let me squash those out right away. What else do I hear of? It's got issues playing back records with more eccentricity than others, or eccentricity issues than others. Total nonsense, right? I mean, think about it this way. The optical system, and I'll drop a link below to Aki's site that explains it in greater detail, works exactly the same way. The tracking of the grooves works exactly the same way as any other cartridge system. There's a cantilever, there is a diamond tip, and it traces the grooves just like any other cartridge would, right? Where the difference comes in is at the transformation part of decoding that mechanical energy into electrical energy. That is done optically. So now that we've cleared some of these out, let's take a look at what happened with the third generation of third generation of cartridges that DS Audio created, starting with the Grandmaster back in 2020, right? So some of the big innovations was an even lower noise floor, twin shading plates instead of a single shading plate, making the shading plate even lighter than before. Having twin diodes going up to the shading plate as opposed to just a single one as in the second generation system. Increasing the channel separation from about 25 to 35 dB, right? That's a significant 10 dB jump. Some of the other improvements, just an overall better design, again, more streamlined third generation, etc. On the optical decoder side, further improvements on the electronic and electrical circuit paths that essentially made it easier and better to decode the cartridge and make it sound even better than it already is. And just overall general improvements, right? So what are some specifics of the 003 that, unlike the other cartridges in the lineup, make it stand out? Well, first of all, I think what's great about it is the price point is for the cartridges at $3,500, the decoder's $2,500, and so for about $5,500, I think they sell it in combo in the US, you get a killer third generation cartridge, optical cartridge and decoder system. The 003 features a line contact diamond, a aluminum cantilever, more on that in a little bit, and it features a machined aluminum body and housing. And gosh, it's so beautiful here, it really is. The decoder itself sits in a nice aluminum chassis, and it's just a good looking system, right? They changed the light that you see on the cartridge itself to a vertical light blue hue, which kind of looks really cool at night when you're playing. And it's really just a sign that A, the cartridge is working, functioning, gets power, and B, that you just get this cool looking light effect with it, right? So yeah, the DS003 system really is remarkable in a sense that with the DS Audio made decoder, again, it's the things that you hear that you really can't unhear once you hear them, right? There's that quietness. There is a level of resolution, sophistication to the sound that you just don't get with an MC or MM cartridge, in my humble opinion, at any price point, right? I've compared, when I did the very first DS Audio review about a year ago, last summer, I think it was, or the summer before, one of the things that I brought out was when I compared it to my reference system with the Einstein dual box phono amp, and any number of my go-to cartridges, Dynavector XV1, the Einstein, the cartridge made by Ortofon, the Lyra Etna, Lyra Atlas. It sounds amazing, right? It really does. But there is a certain sense of calm, a certain sense of just extract that you hear or don't hear when you're listening to the DS Audio system. And that, by the way, begins with just the entry-level DSE1, right? You can hear the same thing. And of course, the other benefit of the DS Audio system is it's all mix and match, right? So you can start with the DSE1 cartridge, and if you want to splurge, get a Meitner decoder, or obviously the matching DS Audio decoder. You can then either go up the line on the cartridge side or the converter side, and you can totally mix and match, right? Believe it or not, the E1 dramatically improves its sound qualities when you play it back through something like the Meitner EMM Labs DS EQ1, right? Conversely, you can play the E1 cartridge back with the 003 DS audio decoder, and same thing, it sounds dramatically better than with the entry-level E1 decoder from DS Audio. Pretty cool stuff, but there's more. Well, hello again. Started raining a little bit more, so I'm having my lovely umbrella here with me. What's at the heart of the DS Audio optical cartridge system? And by the way, just real quick, I forgot to mention this earlier with the intro. Philco actually had, I'll drop a picture in it, Philco actually had an optical cartridge system all the way back in 1945, 44, 45. So just take that into consideration when you think that everything in high-end audio is new. Sad truth is that most of it isn't, and in fact is decades and decades and even centuries old, much like the phonograph itself. But little sidebar. So the crux of the matter, the heart, the raison d'etre of the optical cartridge system is what? It's a very simple phenomenon explanation, which is this. A MCMM cartridge is a velocity sensing cartridge. So it measures the rate of change in the groove. The DS Audio optical cartridge is an absolute position detector. So it detects the absolute position of the cartridge in the groove at the time of where it's at, right? Those two differences, or that difference, the absolute position detection versus the velocity detection, combined with the fact that the RIAA curve, which, you know, most records since the 60s have been used or have been cut with. So the RIAA curve is least effective between 500 hertz and 2 kilohertz, right? I'll put a picture of it and you can actually see that for yourself very easily. Now, what's in that range? Lots of musical information, groove noise, ticks, pops, etc. Why is it that the ticks and the pops are not sounding as loud as they do on an MCMM system? It's precisely because of the fact that because of the absolute position detection, it's not as susceptible to translating the ticks and pops into electrical information, unlike an MCMM cartridge, right? And so that is the reason why you hear that silence, why you hear a far lower noise floor, why you hear, no hum, obviously because there's no magnets involved, right? So any hum issues, by the way, completely eliminated. And again, it brings me back to that sort of very first time that I play and demo a DS Audio system to someone that's never heard it before. Generally speaking, the very first thing they notice is, wow, how quiet, and two, the pops and ticks just don't sound as loud and aren't as perceptible as they normally would be. Another great track that I play and love using is Yellow the Race, the 12-inch 45 RPM UK first edition. Man, I tell you, you listen to that and it's bonkers. So I use it as a hi-fi setup test disc all the time, and I've recommended it many times. In fact, I think my very first video actually mentioned that as track number 5 for your hi-fi setup. With the DS Audio, again, the spaciousness, the layering, and such a layered track, right? The layering of information, the expansiveness of the soundstage, the pressure and the guts and the shove on the bass notes, right? And it's all obviously electronically generated. It's just sensational, man. Subterranean. I mean, trust me, it's freaking bonkers, right? You play it with a regular MCMM system or an MC system, and it's missing, it's softer. There's less of a focus on the authority. There is less of a substantive translation, right? So it's amazing. And again, pretty much across the board, all of the DS Audio Mate EQs have that inherent bass boost just ever so slightly that you can notice, especially when you compare it to the Meitner DS EQ2 or the DS EQ1. And by the way, with the Meitner DS EQ1 and EQ2, let's talk about that for just a minute. So I'd be really remiss if I didn't mention what the 003 sounds like with the DS EQ1 or the EQ2 under the Meitner brand. And it's pretty much the same thing that I heard with the Grandmaster, the E1, the old second gen W3 that I had, where the DS decoders are a great match for the cartridge from a perspective of, you know, you get that house sound, right? What you get with the Meitner decoder is just a little bit more air and separation. I think the bass is better resolved with the Meitner decoders, including the entry level Meitner EQ2. I think you get a little more separation. Vocals sound smoother, clearer, but in all honesty, it just comes down to preference. I like anything else in this hobby, it's all subjective, right? What I like, you may not like. That's why I always tell people, dude, go out and hear it, play it for yourself, and listen to it for yourself. You're going to be the judge of it, right? Those are my perceptions when I compare and contrast the two. So anyway, DS Audio, they knock it out of the ballpark again with the 003, and I can only highly recommend you audition it, check it out. Congratulations to the team at DS Audio, Aki and designers, absolutely fantastic job. And of course, the team at Meitner. So, by the way, of course, this video is not sponsored by either of them. They just sent me the 003 as a loaner to play with. And these are my facts and findings, unmoored of any influence from DS Audio or Ed Meitner, or his son Amadeus Meitner for that matter. Stay classy, stay cool, San Diego, and we'll check in a little bit. Thank you. Ciao.